My name is Tony Veidelis, by the way. I work at the world headquarters of the Christian Science Church in Boston, Massachusetts. And that beautiful image you see in front of you is actually the church that's located in Boston. It's on a 13 and a half acre campus, the largest privately owned public space in the city of Boston. And around those beautiful church buildings are several office buildings. And the complex, the 13 acres, belongs to the Christian Science Church, and that's where I work, in one of those office buildings. You're all welcome to come and visit sometime for sure. It's a beautiful spot. What I'd like to talk about today is basically give you a sense of how the relationship between Ibexa and the Christian Science Church has worked for both of us. And it's been an interesting little journey, but I think the examples I'll bring up kind of will exemplify what qualities as a company for Ibexa and the qualities of the Christian Science Church organization and how they've worked together well over the years to really bring success to the church and its web properties, for sure. So myself, I'm a vendor manager currently, and I've been in technology since 1988. And I've gone through the IT ranks, so I know exactly what it's like to be in an IT department and all the ins and outs and ups and downs related to that. I ended up working in IT consulting for 14 years. Lots of outsourcing engagements. I was outsourcing manager for several organizations after they had pared down their IT departments, and I finished up in the consulting world with Cognizant Technology Solutions in the remote managed services area. So this experience has really given me some insights into the relationships between vendors and IT departments and essentially companies who need IT services or staff augmentation, you name it. And so I've been at the church now. I returned back to the church for the last 11 years in the IT department, and as of late, I've been working as a vendor manager. So real quick, I just want to give a profile of what the church organization does and is about. The founder of the church was named Mary Baker Eddy, and she wrote a book called Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures in 1875. And that book that and the Bible became sort of the basis of the religion. And it exploded, basically, pretty quickly. And she ended up establishing a church organization based in Boston in 1879. And now there's churches all over the world since then, and it's been done pretty well. Because it's an international organization, it has to support, right now it produces content in over 17 different languages. Our most famous, I'll call it, or most well-known publication is the Christian Science Monitor. It started out as a daily international newspaper in 1908, and it's straight up news, no religious content. And it still exists today, but we'll talk about it in a second, but it's now a web-first property with a print derivative. We'll talk about that in a minute. And so right now, we'll get into some of the websites that we rely on the Ibexa platform. 3 of those websites are subscription-based. The website you see right here is christianscience.com. It's basically the flagship website of the church. It's the entrance, the public portal. It's basically, if you have a question about Christian Science, this is probably, if you do a Google search, this is where you'll end up, no matter what. And it'll introduce one to the religion, basically, and then introduce all the products and services that the church has to offer, and also as a resource for churches around the world. And the beauty of this site is that Ibexa allows us to support 19 languages at one time. And you see up in the upper right-hand corner, it says languages. That drop-down takes you to those different languages. It's pretty cool. And there's a lot of Salesforce integration here too, because we have a lot of services and people can actually search for churches and search for church members based upon our integration with Salesforce. As I mentioned, the Christian Science Monitor started in 1908. It's won 7 Pulitzer Prizes, and I'd say within the last 10 years, it became a web-first publication. We were a bit of a bleeding edge, to be honest with you, when it came to doing that. And Ibexa helped us get into that up front. And that's where we began our relationship with, at that point it was easy, obviously, and now it's Ibexa. And when we started Web First, we were ad based, so our traffic probably hit about over 1 million page views a day, getting us close to 40 million in any given month. And we've transitioned from ad based for the Christian Science Monitor to subscription based. So you can visit the site csmonitor.com. Another one of our important subscription websites is called JSH Online. This is an interesting one. It's basically 3 magazines in one. So the founder of the church established 3 magazines, a monthly magazine and 2 weekly magazines, and they've been published for over 100 years now. And we found that our membership around the world wasn't really taking advantage of the publications. They could go to a bookstore and find older copies, but that was about it. So we went through an effort of digitizing over 100 years worth of publications, and we came up with over 250,000 articles. And because of the nature of old magazines and leather-bound books, we couldn't rely on OCR, so we ended up having a team of over 25 offshore resources literally type in those 250,000 articles. And also they included 14 different languages. So pretty significant effort on our part to make that work. That was quite an effort, and it's proved to be a great success. So not only do we support the 14 different languages on this site, but users are able to search through all 100 years worth of articles, and it's been very popular, very popular. Next is, this is probably our most popular piece of content. It's called the Christian Science Quarterly, and it's been around as long as over 100 years as a publication, and it's gone through a couple iterations, and we just relaunched it in just prior to the pandemic, in fact. And it's a completely mobile first. That was the intent. It's a mobile first product, but you can actually go to it via the website, via a browser if you'd like. And it's published every week. There's a fresh piece of content published every week, and Christian Scientists go back to it every day. It's just a big part of any daily Christian Science activity on a daily basis. So significant website for us, and this is obviously on the Ibexa platform. So let me change gears here, and go to the IT department and what it's faced over the last 15 years. Because of change in demographics and the popularity of religion, we definitely had to go towards downside. The church had to downsize its staff. We probably maxed out at like 1,400 employees, give or take. So anyways, the IT department about 10, 15 years ago changed from 60 employees down to 30 employees, which is a huge, huge difference. And the objective was really to maximize the IT spend and narrow the scope of what it was doing. It was just overwhelmed with the diversity of what it had to support. And in the end, which is classic problem with the IT departments, where you just trying to do too much, just too much. And so the objective was, okay, in order to be successful, we knew we had to leverage software as a service for sure. And we had to really dive into cloud services in order to maximize the staff we had. Also, we knew we needed to leverage technology services, vendors, staff augmentation, whatever it took. We knew we needed to take that seriously. And also, it became evident that we needed to think in terms of managing technology, not being, on the keyboard, not producing technology, not developing technology, but managing it. And so that became an important part of our transition over time. So I'm going to take a look at this management concept. What we knew we needed to keep the lights on. IT is a utility service. We needed to keep the internet going. We needed to keep the printers running. We needed to keep the network going. And so that was an important thing we had to keep in-house. and also business systems, enterprise business systems. We had the business expertise, and so we knew we needed to keep that. We couldn't outsource that at all. And we wanted to maintain project management because that relies a lot on business awareness and understanding of how each department in the organization works. And so we really took the philosophy of transitioning from being technicians to a management organization. And we expected our departments that we supported to to outsource technology to some degree, and not look towards the internal IT department. One last piece, which I think is a key part of the transition for us, especially now looking in retrospect, was in 2014 we established a vendor management practice. And I'll quickly explain here what vendor management is. And I'll read this quote because it's a very good example, very good explanation of what vendor management is. It's a discipline that enables organizations to control costs, drive service excellence, and mitigate risks to gain increased value from their vendors throughout the relationship lifecycle. So basically, it's a discipline that allows you to really control and manage and maximize the relationship between the organization you work for and the vendors and outsourced organizations that you work with. We took it very seriously and have developed a serious practice. So I'm going to quickly go through it just so you get a feeling for what it is. There's basically 3 buckets of activity: the selection process for a vendor, the onboarding process, and the governance, long-term governance. And I'm going to focus mainly on the selection and governance because I think it'll express a lot of why the Ibexa relationship has worked over the last 10 years. We spent the time to come up with our definition of an ideal vendor. We kept in mind who we are as an organization. Obviously, we're a religious, Christian-based organization with specific values. We're a certain size, a certain budget, because we are a nonprofit. So we took a lot of different variables into thought, and we came up with the criteria that we thought was really what we're shooting for. What kind of vendors work for us? And we also thought about the previous relationships we'd had and which ones were successful and which ones weren't. So a great example is we like to work with relatively small companies, 5 to 100 employees, depending on the service. And Ibexa is a great example of that. We definitely want to work with an organization that respects us and understands and knows why we're in business and appreciates what we're doing, and that they keep our best interests in mind. We're definitely anti-sales approach, and we just don't like salesy organizations, and that's just inherent in the culture. And but obviously we want the expertise that's needed to get the job done. And basically we want a company that really wants to partner with us and to develop a relationship. I'll quickly go through this. We onboard. We're pretty clear and pretty precise about our onboarding of vendors. But the important thing I wanted to mention here was we care about building a relationship, so we make sure that our IT vendors, technology vendors, have a relationship with our IT department. They're aware of who we are, what we do, what our constraints are. Because even though we're not necessarily delivering the service, we're there as guardians, as consultants to our internal department staff and internal departments. So we need to have some some skin in the game, I guess, with regards to any outsourced relationship. And also cultural onboarding. We really want the vendors that we work with to understand who we are and what our values are and how we work and the idiosyncrasies, I guess, strengths and weaknesses that we bring. To me, this is probably the most important and the most fun part of what we do from a vendor management perspective. Governance is really important because, you try and find a great vendor, a good vendor, and of course, it takes time to understand if they're a good vendor, right? You come in with great expectations and a positive outlook, but over time, things happen, right? It's just like any relationship, any marriage, potentially, long-term relationship. You have to work things through, the ups and downs, ins and outs, and it takes qualities to make that happen effectively. So we really, from a long-term governance perspective, we care about regular communications with our vendors. We want to make sure that we have contact with executives and/or a clear escalation path when issues do arise, and that our vendors are supportive of that and understand that we might take advantage of an escalation path. And we're very disciplined about our periodic evaluations. We have every 6 months, we review every single vendor that we have. And also, depending on the strategic nature of the vendor, we might have meetings, in-face meetings, and face-to-face meetings, and I'll talk about that in a second. And we also take contract renewals as an opportunity to bring up and talk about issues, talk about how the work is being done and the quality of service delivery. So it's not just re-signing another contract or renewing an agreement. It's actually about enhancing the relationship every year. So I just want to kind of reflect upon the fact that the Ibexa relationship has really worked within the confines of what I just described. Ibexa has less than 100 employees, and they've obviously had a lot of deep technology experience and over the years. And their heritage is more technology based than marketing or sales or anything like that. And then the company in general doesn't have a salesy perspective, in a way, hasn't been marketing oriented, and we've appreciated that for sure. And we've always had access to senior leadership from day one. We've known 3 or 4 CEOs over the last 10 years or so, and we've appreciated that transparency and the ability to get to them. And I think even more so over the last few years, with Lars and his team, the customer success team, we've really seen an enhanced customer-centric philosophy, transparency, and willingness to just talk about anything and bring up issues and our expectations and our hopes. So that it's been interesting seeing that evolve and fit in for us and really enhance the relationship. Another thing about a partnership, just to give you a sense of how we work with Ibexa, we do have periodic meetings. Maybe it's every quarter, depends on how much activity is happening. If there's a new release, we'll connect with Lars and his team for sure. And we also reach out to the product development team and just to get a sense of where they're at and what their plans are for the future. So that's definitely at least every quarter for sure. And we also like to include our partners. Right now we're working with Mugo out of Canada. And we include them in some discussions also. And it's really helpful for us and helpful for Mugo to make sure that everybody has their issues on the table and can talk about and understand what our priorities are and what our partners' priorities are and how that aligns with Ibexa. And we've also try and have at least a yearly visit. We've had the CEO of Ibexa visit us last year, and it was a very good visit on campus. So important part of how we see governance, long-term governance, and ways to build a relationship, and not just a transactional technology piece. One thing we actively do is we seek out salespeople come and go, or who knows, but any kind of transitions, we try and stay in touch with the New York office if we can. And like I said, we promote face-to-face meetings in Boston, and we've actually Ibex has used our facilities for some marketing events over the last few years too. And and we make sure we build a relationship with our CIO. So he gets involved and actually gets to know some of the players at Ibexa too. So that's how we've built a relationship, a partnership with Ibexa over the years. So I'm going to wrap it up here, I think. Yeah, this will be my last slide. Basically, just using this whole experience as an example of how, our values, what's important to us, our constraints, our need to downsize, outsource, has really brought together a unique combination of things that allow us to have a successful relationship with Ibexa, not just from a product technology perspective, which we are happy with. As you can see, we've done some serious things with the platform, but also working with a company that has been productive and has had a good relationship. So it's something that's not just transactional. I can't stress enough that even it's been helpful. It's really an important thing to go beyond transaction and start building partnerships. So that's it. That's it, James.
Great. Thank you very much, Tony. That was really interesting. And just looking in the questions here, and I suppose that, the first one I can see is how do you see your business model evolving?
Well, that's interesting because we've really, how can I put this? From digital products have obviously become really critical to us, and we're now in stride now where we have a really solid digital presence with our websites and subscription based. And so now is to really optimize the end user experience for us, and maximize improve the customer service interactions that we have. So that's a big part of what's in store for the future. And now that we have a really solid destination, we're looking to see how we can expand that and reach out. And I'll use the word marketing basically to how to really see how we can reach new visitors. Basically, now that we have a great destination.
Great, thank you. And I can see another one here, which is Ibexa mentioned that subscription is on their future roadmap. How did you set up subs management on the Easy platform you were on?
Right now, we work with a company called CDS Global, and so we built some APIs interactions with their order systems, and so that's pretty much how we took care of that. We'll be transitioning over time that's a really interesting point because we are putting a lot of effort right now to optimize that process and to build a better process and a better system for our visitors who come to subscribe, because we're not completely happy with the way it is now. It has nothing to do with Ibexa. It's really more on the fulfillment side, on the transaction side with our other partner.
Great, thank you. And I've got one here. What is it about Ibexa's culture that's most valuable to the Christian Science Church?
Right now, I think it's been our ability to actually talk to people. I mean, I feel very comfortable asking to meet with the CEO right now of Ibexa. And I think their willingness to be transparent with us, and they've always been clear, opening the kimono with regards to their plans for the future, their product roadmap, their priorities, and we prefer that openness and that transparency. So I think to me that's probably been the most valuable piece from a relationship perspective.
Great, thank you. And the final one, so do you see geographical proximity as an advantage for your IT vendors?
When we do vendor searches, we don't even care about geography. The only thing we care about is really time zones, and if it's too much of a time zone difference. If we can overcome time zones, we don't really care where they are. We've interviewed all the partners, all the Ibexa partners in North America, and gotten to know them, and we're open to working with potentially anyone, no matter where they are. In Europe, we tend not to, just because of the time zone difference there.
Thank you very much. And I can't see any more questions unless we've got any more from the other panelists. But thank you very much. That was really interesting, Tony. And I next time I'm in Boston, I will visit.
Please do.
It does look fantastic.
Yeah,
your location.
anyone in this meeting is welcome to reach out to me, and I'd be happy to show them around. It's a really fascinating, interesting place. It's great to have visitors. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony. That's great.